Hey, good morning, everybody. Now, a couple of days ago, it was December the 21st, and a lot of things happened on that day regarding Ukraine. The thing that most people know is that President Zelensky of Ukraine went to visit the United States for the first time, and he was greeted like some kind of hero, and he got to meet the president, Biden, his wife, got a tour of the White House, I'm sure, and then was greeted in the Congress of the United States by Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker, given a standing ovation by all the sort of, the minions there who are happy to just do what they're told and greet and clap the guy who is dressed in his green combat fatigues, even in the Congress of the United States. And they put a big Ukrainian flag behind him, and it was signed by some people, and they're all having photo ops with this guy. While he was there, he asked for lots more money for Ukraine in order to get more weapons, in order to prolong and escalate this very unnecessary conflict. I understand $54 billion extra are going to be given to Ukraine from the United States, on top of all the money that's already been given to them, and the money that's coming from other countries like the UK and Germany, etc., etc. So he was over there being greeted and wined and dined on the winter solstice. Another thing happened on that day as well, which was not so well reported, just on social media. Now, the old buffoon of a Prime Minister of the UK, Boris Johnson, put out a tweet on the winter solstice, December the 21st, and he said this: Russia's barbaric and illegal invasion of Ukraine has led to millions of Ukrainians losing electricity, water, and vital supplies. I am supporting the Hour for Ukraine tonight at 8 p.m. in solidarity with them. Victory to Ukraine. Well, this is just utter hypocrisy, because they were ready to do a peace deal in April. And Boris Johnson went over there, met Zelensky, and then the next thing you know, they weren't going to do it. They were continuing the conflict. So, I don't know exactly what he spoke about in his private meetings there, but it does seem that without this Boris Johnson guy, a lot of Ukrainians would still be alive today, because the conflict may well have been over with a peace deal negotiated in Turkey between Russia and Ukraine months and months ago. But that didn't happen, probably because of this guy. What he said and what he linked to was this text box. It says, "Stand in solidarity with Ukraine this Christmas. Switch off your festive lights. Show your support. We can see your support even in the darkness. 21st of December, 8 p.m. So he's trying to get everybody to do some kind of ritual on the winter solstice day. Switch off your lights for Ukraine. Make yourself dark for an hour. I don't know what that's supposed to represent, but it does look like some kind of bizarre collective ritual. Just the same as when the lockdown period started, same bloke, Boris Johnson, in the UK, was propagandising this clap for the NHS every Thursday at 8 p.m. People were encouraged by the government, by the mainstream media, to go out on the street, clap for the nurses, bang some pots and pans for the nurses, while some of them were injecting older people with midazolam. I didn't do that, thank goodness, and I congratulate you if you didn't, and I congratulate you again if you didn't take any notice of this new ritual that Boris Johnson's trying to get everybody to do. And I guess this is going round. Other people as well are sharing this little sort of graphic on social media to try to get people to do this. Now, why I said this is the winter solstice, these two things are happening on the winter solstice day, and other things. There's all kinds of other agreements going on. Russia's made an open agreement with Iran and China. America's made a formal agreement with Israel, military agreement. All these things were announced on the winter solstice. Now, I don't make this is where things might get a little bit, into territory where you have to decide whether you accept it or not. And I, I'm still thinking about these things as well. No, I don't pretend anything apart from that I'm a Christian. But there are a lot of people in positions of power in the global elite or in the elite in the collective West, certainly, who follow a different religion, which is the exact opposite of Christianity, without saying what it is. I think you can understand. And the people who follow that particular religion, they think that by announcing bad things or by doing rituals on certain days, that gives them more power. So they make an announcement a lot of times on the spring equinox. You see, the Iraq War started on the spring equinox. The lockdowns started or were announced on the spring equinox all over the world. Then in this country, there were new lockdowns announced on the winter solstice. A few months later, and they were going to do it again last year, but there was a lot of pushback by the people, and they didn't do it in the UK. Now, so these are things that are happening on the winter solstice. Other days that they often use to announce big announcements. You got obviously the summer solstice, the spring equinox, May the 1st, Halloween, etc., New Year's Day. Often people make big announcements on those days because there are certain people who have a certain belief that by doing things on these particular days in the calendar of what they believe in, it gives them more power and more energy. So it's very interesting that there's so many different things being announced to do with the Ukraine conflict that are converging on the same day on the winter solstice. You take that or leave it as you like. But certainly what seems to be happening is that the leaders at the moment, who are the people who are leaders in the collective West, are trying to escalate the situation and turn this into an open, overt war between NATO and Russia. They're not even pretending anymore that they're not at war. I mean, they for a few months they were saying, we're not at war, we're just giving money. And then they're like, we're not at war, we're just giving weapons to Zelensky. Now they're like, oh, yeah, well, we're kind of, we're giving them weapons to fire into Russia further and further. And there's NATO personnel on the ground who are actually using these new weapons and weapon systems because there's not enough time to train the Ukrainians to operate the new high-tech weapon systems, first the HIMARS and now the Patriot systems, then there'll be something else, but they're escalating all the time, and they're putting the 101st Airborne Brigade, from the US is now stationed in Romania. First time they've been stationed outside the USA since the Second World War. Probably ready to go in to Ukraine if there is, an excuse for them to do so. So they're not even pretending anymore that they don't want a hot war between NATO and Russia. And there are some people who actually do want to destroy Russia, which I think is insane because there's no reason why we can't be friends. It would be the most natural thing in the world for the West and Russia to be friends and to trade with each other and to get on with each other and be economic partners with each other. But there seems to be certain people who want to ruin any possibility of that ever happening again, which they will do if they stoke up a hot war, and especially if that goes nuclear. For the first time, the United States has changed its stance on nuclear weapons in a very, very dangerous way. So it was always the case that both Russia and the United States said, we will never, ever use nuclear weapons in a first strike scenario. We'll only ever use them if there's an existential threat. If the other side fires first, we'll fire back. that was the doctrine of mutually assured destruction. They both got nuclear weapons, but they wouldn't use them unless the other side used them first. So essentially, no one would ever use them. Russia still has that stance, and President Putin affirmed just this week they would never use nuclear weapons unless the other side fired first, and there was an existential threat to Russia's existence. But President Biden has changed the United States doctrine and policy and stance with nuclear weapons, and he's now saying they would use them in a first strike scenario and for a preemptive strike, which is absolute madness. And that could lead to global holocaust. We don't want that. We want to de-escalate the situation. And there's always the possibility of de-escalating. There's always the possibility of not jumping over the cliff until the moment you do actually jump over the cliff. And I know these idiots that we've got in power at the moment in the collective West are just stoking up tensions more and more and more, rather than sticking to the Minsk agreements that we could have done and avoided the whole situation and conflict from ever starting. They've not done that. They've broken the agreements. They've escalated. They look like they want a hot war, but we can always avoid it until the moment that it happens. You can always stop running towards the cliff, stop and turn back. I've been calling for that from the beginning, and I still call for it again. De-escalate. Stop sending money and weapons to this Zelensky guy who was in Washington on the winter solstice day, and de-escalate the situation, because if we escalate into a hot war, it's no good for the West, it's no good for Russia, it's no good for Ukraine. If you genuinely care about saving people's lives and peace, search for peace now and stop the war.